count of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We are live. Hello and welcome to PropTechBuzz, a global business podcast channel where we talk to PropTech leaders, founders, CEOs, and VCs from all over the world and learn from them how to build and scale successful PropTech companies. Talking about scaling successful PropTech companies, we could not have gotten a much more deserving guest than us today from Flow. Let me just introduce him. Our guest today is Daniel Levy. He's the co-founder and co-CEO of Flow Living. Flow is a PropTech company that goes straight to the source of largest social platforms in the world to match people with property. A large volume of qualified leads, faster and more cost effective, are matched there. Daniel started his career as a commercial attorney before co-founding and serving as CEO of Poppy Media, which is Africa's largest ad tech and performance marketing company. In 2015, he sold Poppy Media to French-based global communications group Publicis, and then after which he founded Flow. And today, Flow has become one of the global names in PropTech. One of the themes that we often follow at PropTechBuzz is we try to look at stories of PropTech companies which have tried going beyond the scope of their local geographies and becoming successful, and so that other entrepreneurs can take lessons from such stories, and they could also apply the same playbook. And that's exactly why I wanted Daniel to come on our platform, on our podcast, and share his success stories to go global. So with that, let's welcome Daniel. Daniel, welcome to PropTech Buzz. How are you doing today?
Fantastic. Thank you for having me, Ravi. I'm
The pleasure is
excited
mine,
to
Daniel.
have the discussion.
The pleasure is mine, Daniel. As I mentioned, I've been wanting to have you since long, ever since we knew about your phenomenal growth story. But before we get into those meatier stuff, maybe I gave a brief intro about your career, but maybe you could talk a little bit more about your career trajectory and your story of building Flow.
Sure. So, I think the background is an important one to Flow success. I started my former company with my co-founder, Gil. The company is called Poppy Media. Gil is an engineer. There was also another engineer who was a co-founder of that business, Poppy Media. We were really at the precipice of Facebook starting in 2006 when it had about 60 million global users. We identified an opportunity as to how we could enable companies to create ads in the news feed of Facebook long before Facebook actually allowed it. If you've seen the movie The Social Network, it wasn't Mark Zuckerberg's primary objective to create ads in the news feed, but we did. And the tech enabled large brands like Unilever, Nestle, and global Fortune 500 companies to utilize our technology in that space. The business grew, and we became the largest buyers of Facebook media inventory in Africa and essentially a Facebook marketing partner. And through that 8-year journey, really learned the ins and outs of the fancy algorithms, etc. And as other social platforms were born, we integrated that into our technology. So it became a holistic environment for what became media agencies' ability to buy media inventory at scale for all their clients. During the building, running of that business, we didn't represent the property industry. As you all know, property is a very fragmented space. It was easier for us to go and talk to the CMO of Unilever or Nestle, a large organization. I always call property a bit of a topsy-turvy environment where you've got billions of assets under management, but only 50 people that are running the show, whereas typically technology follows where there's a lot of people, where people are trying to introduce efficiencies into their business. So property is essentially the largest sector on the planet. It's certainly the most valuable, and that's where a lot of wealth is actually stored. To that end, I come from a property family too. I'd always had the propensity of wanting to get into the space and try and solve something. I'd like to say, or I'd like to think that everything was by design, but it's certainly not that way in an entrepreneurial landscape. You fall more than you run, certainly in the beginning. But we identified an opportunity when COVID hit as to how we could enable the property industry, particularly estate agents, developers, etc., to proliferate the inventory that they needed to sell or rent onto social platforms, which was our DNA. And what was quite, I suppose, interesting and perturbing at the time is that I had just been in a business, grew it, and exited in an industry that was already very mature, only to find that in the property sector, it wasn't mature at all. And this was round 2 with all the scars on our back. So that kind of brings you to, why we got to Flow. And I suppose the last point to give a bit of context to Flow is it's an omni-channel way of marketing for the property industry, and I'm just breaking that down. As you well know, people in the property sector will use property portals or their websites or various other modes of marketing to get the job done, be it a rental or sale. What we realized is that none of these players in the space were really knowing and understanding the real value of social platforms. And that's where the eyeballs are. People are spending 3 or 4 hours a day on social media. You need to be the guys that take the property to the people as opposed to wait for people to come to the property. So we don't advocate one or the other. It's an agnostic solution to being on multiple channels to give yourself the best opportunity to drive leads and sales.
Got it. Just tell us, what was the status quo before you tried solving inventory on social media? How are agents doing now? You mentioned that it is inefficient, that they spend a lot of time on social media. So you mentioned about the problem space and the solution. Could you explain before and after what Flow does?
So 100%. So an estate agent, their job is to rent or sell property. That's what they should be doing all day, every day. They are not marketing specialists. They're not well attuned to different social platforms, the nuances, creative. All these things are really important metrics when you're trying to create ads on social platforms. What they were doing is they were dabbling in the space, be it posting content onto a fan page or things of that nature, actually not knowing and understanding how the algorithms of social media work. In other words, you can post anything you like onto a fan page, but organic reach is probably around 1%, which means unless you're putting money behind stuff you're posting, you're actually getting no benefit. And I think there was a massive misnomer in the industry as the value or that kind of metric versus the reality. And what we aimed to say was, listen, there's a way that you guys can get the Rolls-Royce output of all these channels, which Flow's technology can enable: Facebook, Instagram, Google Display, TikTok's coming, etc. And while you're selling and renting, which is what you should be doing, this technology is doing all the heavy lifting from a lead generation point of view and or brand building perspective. And it's created that you're getting that Rolls-Royce output, but you do not have to be professional in any way, shape, or form to know and understand what's happening in the background relative to actually doing 3 steps to get the stuff live. So that's the problem that we foresaw. And we're a business that enables scale. So again, if you take down to an estate agency office where there, 10 agents over there, each person's got a role, a function, maybe an admin person. We try and enable all different objectives that an estate agent may need, which is leads, proliferation of brand, potentially recruiting other agents, etc. Developers would want to sell inventory and stock. There are different use cases for different slithers of the market that our technology enables.
All right. And how's the experience like? Say somebody goes to Flow and they go and buy an ad package. Is that how it works, or
good question. So I suppose from the entrepreneurial side of things, When we started, we took a view of how do you actually build a scalable business as fast as possible. So we thought, well, what are the big distribution channels that would be available in South Africa? So anyone who was talking to an estate agent or developer at scale was somebody I wanted to talk to. So we took a view that we would go to the biggest brands on a franchisor level, essentially engage with them. They would introduce us to, call it, the top 20% of their offices that are bringing 80% of the revenue. Thankfully, the property industry is one that suffers from fear of missing out. In other words, once one brand sees what you're doing, others want to kind of get on the bandwagon. But effectively, we would literally go door to door to door, which is a long, arduous process. But over a 3-year period, we managed to get a couple of hundred offices on our books and naturally a couple of thousand agents in the back of that. Just to extrapolate a little on that question, we took a view that globally we did not want to roll out with the same strategy. In other words, our global strategy has been to partner with CRMs or property portals to the extent that is, what I call the top of the totem pole. If you are able to pull off a deal with such a key role player, invariably they speak into the entire industry. And what that enables you to do is to, strap on your technology to their offering on a white labeled solution. And you're now being able to play on a real large scale. So that's been the two different strategies that we've implemented, and the latter, i.e. the portal CRM, is very much a big part of our global rollout.
Nice. And so globally, I understand that you partner with CRMs and portals. Locally in South Africa, if an agent comes to you,
they can absolutely use the technology themselves. It's self-serve if they want it to be. We operate a managed service within our organization. Alternatively, they can get their own login details. It pulls in any of the inventory that they have automatically through a syndicator that they may use already. There's a 3-step process of creating an ad using a template. We create the templates, but it would change color relative to any CR that they have. They pull in the property that they want to create an ad for. They then select the targeting, the geo, the who needs to see it, and any other interest overlays with the ability to retarget any kind of data they already have, right? So you want to retarget people who you actually know are looking for property. They select a price point, right, which they could run it for 3 days, 4 days, up to a month or more. They put in a credit card, and the ads go live.
Excellent. And do you also provide them some performance marketing in terms of analytics and stuff like that on how they're performing?
All in the system, correct. Everything is live. The system naturally would, the manifestation of that 3-step process that I spoke of would create ads on all these different channels that Flow is integrated into. But equally, when a consumer sees it on a social platform, they would click on it. Mm-hmm. It would either drive the lead to an estate agent's website, if that's where they wanted the lead to go. Alternatively, our technology would actually build a landing page, which is what we call wired up to the max. It's got all the appropriate tracking pixels and things of that nature, where it's got all the information on the specific property that they've loaded. So anything that's on their website would be on this one pager. But what the tech further goes and does is it recommends to inquire other properties of that estate agency office only. In other words, we kind of keep their competition at bay, right? So you want a lead to choose from that agent's stock only within a similar geo and a similar price point. And that's a unique selling proposition. So there are different ways to use our technology. Again, you do not have to be technically advanced. The tech's really giving you the Rolls-Royce output for what it is you're trying to achieve.
Got it. I'm just curious because you are a digital marketing guru. You have done this for decades now. So there are So yours is an omni-channel platform. So there are these Facebook campaign managers, LinkedIn campaign managers. So are they not self-sufficient for these agents to take advantage of? How do you differentiate from somebody doing it directly, running these campaigns on these social media platforms?
Yeah, good question. So uh, I suppose there are a lot of answers to that. In the first instance, what our technology does is specific for the property industry. It's not. I mean, if you look at Facebook Business Manager, it's the same piece of tech for anybody who wants to use it, whether you Unilever, Nestle, or a mom and pop. It's the same tool, right? So most people don't use all the bells and whistles that such a piece of tech would actually enable you to do. So we've actually just dialed that down, right, to give you one straight vertical for property. That's point one. Point two, because you're actually using technology over here, the bulk of your spend is actually going on to the dissemination of what it is you're trying to sell. In other words, Facebook's getting the bulk of the money. Now, as soon as you introduce layers of fees, if you will, for other people doing the work, then naturally what you can spend on where the money, where the actual ad needs to go is far less. We also don't like competing with these people. In other words, there are many agency offices that may have people that do their marketing, whatever. They can use the tech. They use it themselves to make their lives easier, and they're doing the work of 15, 20 agents that are in their office that are selling hundreds of stock at any given point in time. It's actually very difficult for a single campaign manager to do all of that in an agile way and keep stock of all of that. So all of this, the reporting, we call it on an office level that you get that element of manage where you're managing from franchisor to multiple franchisees to agents. So it's a hierarchical way of working. In addition to that, we're very much in the data space, right? So we cultivate data on behalf of our clients in terms of the leads that are coming into their world. And we enable them the ability to retarget these audiences at any given point in time. Now, if you look at big estate agency brands, maybe they do have marketing departments or things of that nature. But as soon as you start going down the long tail, most people they're not able to afford these layers. And unfortunately, the reason that it works that way is because property is trapped in a transfer cycle. It's different everywhere else around the world, but in most instances, it takes 3 months for property to go through a transfer, which means the agent doesn't have liquidity to spend on marketing themselves, right? So you've constantly got to be that. I mean, well, there is an element of frugality as to when people are spending money, and using technology ensures that you can actually, I suppose, get more bang for your buck.
Got it. And what's the unit of costing for your product? Is it the number of impressions, or number of likes, or is it the number of ad budget? How do you price your product?
Yes. So as I say, the customer or client would select a budget. We operate on a percentage of marketing spend. The KPIs that the system ultimately generates would be ad views, leads, things of that nature, reach, etc. So the dashboard actually outputs all of that.
Got it. Excellent. Now let's come on the meatier part, which is the secret sauce of your business, because you are a role model for many PropTech companies on how to scale beyond your local geographies. Could you give us a sense of the scale that you are operating today? How many regions and markets are you operating today?
Yeah, so I think just an anecdotal story, which is probably relevant, is starting a global business. I mean, our former business, we built a large business in Africa. We had clients in other regions around the world, but the point that I'm making is not easy, right? You're dealing in foreign time zones, culture, nuance, and a million and one different things that are against you at any given point in time. COVID, however, was an interesting leveling playing field. In other words, Zoom, if you I suppose had the appropriate grit, coupled with LinkedIn, enabled and pushed people to engage. So the first territory we looked at going into was Australia, because in Australia they've got a what they call a vendor paid market. In other words, the seller of a property pays for the marketing of their house, and that is probably one of 5 countries around the world that do such a thing. Whereas in South Africa, the agent pays to market your house. So the point is, there's a very thick slither over there of marketing spend, and we thought that that was a very good opportunity for flow. I reached out to some friends who were kind of in the digital space. Long story short, I just knocked on doors. You couldn't even get into Australia from a COVID point of view. And the moment one could, there was a property portal conference. And we flew in. We actually got there a day late, and we hustled the room literally to understand who all the key role players were. Bumped a couple of other South Africans, and long story short is relationships were formed. And weirdly enough, my former business, we did the same thing. We tried to reach out to Facebook, and they wouldn't really engage with us. So Gil and I got on a plane and flew to Dublin and literally knocked on the door, and the rest is history. So there's no such thing as a free lunch. We then, when we were in the Australian market, we understood that it was very competitive, very advanced too, and that going door to door over there would be probably an insurmountable outcome, in the sense that time zone, a million other nuances were probably against us. It forced us to figure out how quickly we could try and look at other opportunities over there, and hence what blossomed out of that is to engage with CRMs and portals around the world. Once we understood that, we started to tap into particular conferences, niche, super niche, of the right players in the room. You know, the ilk of, you know, your NASPA's equivalents that are portal players, you know, horizontal portals in car, property, jobs, etc. There are many such companies around the world, and we dialed into such a conference, and we flew to the first one last year in Madrid. And what we learnt over there was that was the absolute appropriate stomping ground for what we needed to do. The next move is we started to sponsor these events around the world, and we used that as our lead funnel to engage with these key role players. What we didn't realize, and what we thought initially, was that the ability to close these deals would be a lot shorter than we thought. And what came of that is the sales cycle naturally is longer than one expects, but that has now become our global strategy. We are at any given point in time engaging many portals around the world. We've closed deals in a whole host of territories, from Netherlands, Israel, Germany, Brazil, Canada, Panama. I mean, it's really, in some instances, territories we never even would have thought of. But the problem is the same, right? Every estate agent, doesn't matter where you go on the planet, same issue. Our solve is enabling them to blend what they need to do onto social platforms, and that's been very liberating for us. And that's where we spend our energy. Yeah.
You said the lead funnel is usually long in B2B. How long are we talking about from lead to conversion?
Yeah, so initially we thought it would be a 3-month cycle. We then started to learn it was probably about a 6-month cycle. But within that, we've had outliers. You know, one took 2 weeks, one took 18 months. So we're still finding out what that absolute mix is. But I think the more the rhetoric is spoken of where we play, right, we're that blend of, I always say that whoever controls the lead is effectively the sexy space, right? Social media is a sexy offering. And to that end, that is where the conversations are going. And equally, data is a very sexy space. And that is now ensuring that our lead cycle can become a lot shorter, hopefully, in time to come.
Nice. So the thing is, the entire PropTech industry, since ours is also a platform where we launch and promote PropTech products in very different categories. Okay, so we have 11 product families. Where would you put your category in the entire gamut of PropTech ecosystem? Is it under marketing? Is it marketing technology of PropTech? Is that the right way to put it?
Yeah. Yes. I often get asked this question, which is quite interesting. So, I mean, we definitely, our former business was certainly ad tech. And we certainly traverse ad tech / prop tech. There's no doubt about it. And that's the environment that we're in. I mean, prop tech, as you well know, there are many verticals and there are many key role players that are doing something in the space. But yeah, we're playing in the lead space, the marketing space, the portal space. And it's certainly the budget that we go after, which is the clear definer, is marketing spend.
Good. I think you will fall under multiple categories. We also have a category called agent and broker tech. Okay. And then there is marketing tech for the developer ecosystem. I don't think you play there. Your play is primarily agent and broker tech. So I think you will fall in under multiple categories. Excellent. Cool. So since you are a veteran and since this is a business podcast, one of the important pieces of the conversation often is to share some knowledge and wisdom to all the listeners or other PropTech newbies, founders, in learning about market and growth strategies. So you shared a fair bit of your experience on how you went door to door, how did you go to niche conferences. But what do you think are the strategies that have worked for you for growth and scale? Is it through partnership? Is it through promotions that you can actually give advice to other entrepreneurs who might not have expensive mistakes to make and learn from you?
Yeah, good question. So, look, fundamentally, hindsight's 2020, and notwithstanding the scars on my back and the experience, you make a lot of mistakes along the way. And we're a venture capital backed business. The first iteration of Flow was not what I've told you about. In other words, it wasn't centered around an ad tech component. COVID really shifted our thinking into understanding our DNA and history and why this was a good opportunity. But the point being is, I would, if I had to do this all again, I'd take a long, hard look as to the type of partners you need around the table, right, to proliferate what it is you're trying to achieve within the shortest space of time. Naturally, any business that you get into is not a straight line, which I appreciate, but I think the importance of knowing and understanding who the right role players are, I always say you're not trying to reinvent a wheel. You're certainly creating innovation, right? But in terms of the space, you've got to be very mindful of who all the role players are in the market, locally and globally. If there's elements of collaborative work together, you should entertain that. You don't want to own 100% of a pie that's not going anywhere, right? You're happy, if you're gonna dilute equity, make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons. Equally, if you're going to raise capital, make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. In terms of ideation and things of that nature, we there is the cliche where you build what you need to do. I mean, invariably, we sell a lot of stuff that we're still catching up in terms of building. It may not sound like the right approach, but invariably, you're trying to test product market fit. There's a strong flywheel that you get when you understand how to connect the dots. And I think the last point, as I mentioned, when we initially thought to go door to door, I didn't have a choice. Right? Had I taken our tech to a portal, there was no substance behind what we had, even though it was a great idea. you would argue, well, why don't they just do this themselves? But once you've got technology that's built, and you really understand how long it took to get there, to maintain, what's the moat that you've built, then there's an appropriate time to engage bigger key role players and understand equally, what does the end game look like? When we sold our last business, never did I think I'd ever sell it until somebody comes to you with a number and then you sit down and you consider. But the point is, it is good to have a view of what the beginning, middle, and end look like of any kind of engagement, because my philosophy in life is really the only commodity I have is time. And that to me is more important than money or anything, right? And obviously family is included in where I spend my time, but I will only spend my time where I love what I do. And one really needs to focus on understanding all those little nuances and mechanics, and don't chase things out of ego. Know when to give up a particular line of revenue because you could spend more time on something that's got a much bigger, TAM, total addressable market, or something like that. So you've got to be quite pragmatic and believe in yourself, and equally pull yourself away from stuff that doesn't work.
Could you shed some light on partnership? Say you go to a new market and it's a big market, and you know that you cannot capture this market without a local partner. What kind of a rule of thumb do you have for partnership? Like is it a long drawn negotiations, or you are very generous, saying that, hey, without this partner I will not
be able to,
yeah.
So yeah, that's a great question. So I mean, commercially, right, the way in which our business works with such businesses is we've got what we call a partner model and a wholesale model. A partner model in our world means that what we bring to the party is the technology, and what our partner CRM or portal brings is their community, right? You co-create the product offering within their ecosystem, which is a white labeled solution using our technology, and you share in the upside. That way, both sides are incentivized to drive, the best possible outcome. We find that people or companies who don't know a lot about this space are quite inclined to go down that road, because the risk of them applying the time, effort, and energy in development and things of that nature is quite onerous. So therefore, partner, okay? And you've got the partner build or buy. That's really the way the world works. Then you've got the wholesale side of things, where we recognize that, when other companies count your money, they don't want you to be making more than them or things of that nature. I don't say that in a glib way. What I'm saying, however, is that if they feel that they can make more money, let them, right? So in that instance, it's a wholesale model which kind of caps what Flow would earn at any instance, and allows them to mark it up in the event that they feel they can do X, Y, and Z. And then there's SaaS fees and things of that nature in our world. So they're hybrids. And then, from a true partnership point of view in terms of proliferation, right? So there's commercial partnerships, and then there's, I suppose, bigger, grander strategies where one would partner. It's I'd like to say they're not ethereal things, but you could construe them as, like chemistry, and moral compass and things of that nature, which are very important to Gil and I as to who we get into business with. So those are how I see the world. Yeah.
How do you evaluate the moral campus and the natural affinity or partnership? How do you judge that? Do you talk to the owners to see whether they are fair play in business and stuff like that? How do you measure that, especially a new partner whom you have never done business before?
So good question. So I've come from the school, if you don't ask, you don't get, right? So you've got to have a little bit of a cheekiness to how you go about business. But by way of one example, at one of these conferences, there was a guy who spoke on stage who was highly impressive, who had worked for one of these global portals. And as he left the stage, we approached him and asked him if he wanted to be an advisor to our business. And he actually came on board. So in that instance, he's been kind of a bit of a front man as to who it is we engage. So there's a way in which you can, I suppose, get a bit of behind the scenes as to who you're getting into business with, where you're getting some kind of credibility check in that instance. So you know, if you're going to go in blind, then you expect where it may fall. But these are ways in which we try and mitigate, you know, relationships or business strategy or test things. I think that's a very good way to go about it, yeah.
And is your approach being trustful before, because you do not know the person? Yes, you do everything to mitigate it, but the approach should always be being trustful, right? Before being doubtful, right? Out of these two options, you either be trustful or you are always doubting whether this will work out or not. And eventually, so some people start with being trustworthy, and some people start with being doubtful. So what's your approach there?
I mean, in certain instances, I think I've got a bit of a sixth sense. So my former career, I used to be a commercial attorney, and attorneys have a natural inclination to smell something when it smells like something, right? So, and people invariably, people are people. You know, there's EQ, and you understand who you're talking to, and you get a flair of whether it is that you can have a resonance with somebody in the first instance. We don't like making deals out of desperation, so we don't have to. And we look at things in the long run. So, I mean, obviously, it's not a fine science, and you're going to get burnt somewhere along the line. But there are ways to mitigate that kind of engagement. And yeah, you know, to answer it directly, I think we've learned. You know, someone once said that NDAs are meaningless. I mean, truth, they really don't. They don't hold up much. You know, non-disclosure agreement. I think when people throw those around the room, in certain instances, they're coming with a distrusting perspective, right? So there's always a leap of faith, and we speak about that often in our business. But I think equally the leap of faith that we take is also calculated risk. In other words, depending on who we're talking to, we'd know and ascertain whether they had the ability to go and build or do what it is that we did. And you know, I always say also, nothing of nothing is nothing. So you have to live on the edge a little bit. You know what I mean? Because the antithesis of that could be amazing.
Right. Excellent. So let's talk about the future of this space that we are at, right? Because any founder or entrepreneur is always scanning the horizons to see where is the next disruption going to be, and stuff like that. So where do you think, how is this space evolving, especially on ad tech, on marketing tech, for the agents and the brokers globally?
Yeah, so I think great question. You know, if you look at portals, and you see what's going on around the world with you know, different iterations of portals buying property and trying to sell the property to their users, etc., Zillow, etc. You've got portals that have gone into the bond origination space. All of these kind of done a U-turn and are pulling back to their core offering, which is a media business, really. So if you take that and extrapolate on that core proposition, portals invariably have run out of inventory to sell on their site, right? So the proposition now becomes what we call off-site marketing. In other words, you're enabling customers or estate agents or things of that nature to market on off-site social media, Google display, etc., on a retargeted basis to the portal's audience. So I'll say that again slowly, right? A portal naturally has high traffic volume of high intent. If you're enabling the ability for estate agents to retarget your portal traffic, but for them being able to do that, they're not as close to the coalface as they would want to be, right? So everyone wants to know who those leads are, the traffic, etc. So why I mention this is because as soon as you start implementing what we call offsite traffic, it's endless what you can do. You're now not limited to the inventory just the portal has. So the ability for a portal to increase their revenues and go after, I wouldn't say social budgets, but you're augmenting your offering with social budget is budget that you would never have got in the first instance. So
Got it.
I see that happening. I see that amongst many portals around the world that's happening. And then
So would they be
the other part of that,
would they be partnering with players like you?
absolutely. So we're the rails, we're the technology that's enabling that, which is entirely the reason why we've gone and partnered with portals around the world. And then the data component is also where this thing's going to blossom. So as you well know, within the social space, cookies are becoming a thing of the past. So unless you have first party data to enrich what it is you're trying to do or achieve, you may be a bit dead in the water. So the stringing of social marketing portal data together becomes the next evolution of what we see happening in time to come.
Excellent. That is the biggest takeaway for me. Let's talk about your journey and highlight a few highs and lows in your journey. I'm sure it has not been a smooth run. You have had your share of pitfalls and lows as well. Do you want to share your lows and then your highs, please?
Yeah, so I mentioned a little bit earlier. I think there've been instances in flow of unfortunately doing people who didn't share the same moral compass as Gil and I, and that is disheartening when it happens. It can be very destructive when it happens too, and it obviously puts your mind where it shouldn't be or it occupies headspace. So that to me, I think when people let you down is a big thing. But we're strong people and got thick skins. So you pick up and move on, but you try and mitigate for that in the future. So that's certainly a low light. We were in a capital raise last year, which is probably the worst year in the world to try and have raised capital, but we closed that round on the day before Christmas. That took a lot of energy from us. It's a very, very difficult road to go down. Certainly not for everybody, and it's like running a separate business on the side. So even though there was elation at the end, the during was very trying and testing. The highs, for me, connecting the dots. When you figure out product market fit and how the story plays out, it's the most euphoric thing in the world because you're almost untouchable. I mean, again, I say that with a pinch of salt, but this is not our first rodeo. We're ad tech entrepreneurs, been around this game for 20 years. We really know and understand it. And the way that we're piecing this together really fills my time. And as I said, that's my commodity. I'm so happy to do what I do every single day and build and innovate and grow in a market that is global, where we learn how to trade in different territories around the world, how to do deals in different territories, where I think often entrepreneurs suffer from imposter syndrome, where you think you're not good enough to trade elsewhere because you're not a local. But I think we've proven that misnomer to be incorrect, and that gives you another gust of wind to keep moving and doing what you do.
Excellent. I did not intend to ask this, but since you mentioned about Gil a couple of times, could you explain your dynamic working with Gil and with any co-founder? What has worked, what has not worked, especially other entrepreneurs who might be looking for a co-founder? What works in a long-term, good, solid relationship in a co-founder, with your experience?
Same statement. Moral compass. To me, the fundamentals of a human being are the most important thing for us. It's not money. We don't wake up and pray to it. It is moral compass to know that somebody's got your back when you need it, and he shares the same view of me. I always say we're like an old married couple where we kind of do everything together from a business point of view. He knows exactly what I'm thinking and vice versa. And we come to the party with different skill sets, yet similar. In other words, he is an electrical engineer by training. And I'm a lawyer, as I mentioned. I think both sets of training are trained to solve. Lawyers are trained to solve problems, equally so engineers. And there's a preemptive component to both ways of training. Lawyer, again, you're trying to preempt the outcome, and equally an engineer is also trying to preempt the outcome. So Gil in the business runs and manages the products, the marketing side. Equally, he's on the sales enterprise side of the business. On my side of the business, obviously, I handle the whole sales function within the company, and the finance, the legal, HR, marketing is also a joint component to both of us. So we're very well suited. So your question of people that are founding businesses, I would highly recommend, and also History Gil and I invested in different businesses. If there's never a co-founder who's an engineer, it's a problem for me because you almost don't know a language that is so fundamental in what you do. So he knows, or at least I know, he's got my back when it comes to that function of the business, and equally I've got his when it comes to commercial law and everything else. So just a very good chemistry. Yeah.
Excellent. And my last question here is, what's next for Flow? Say the next year or two, how does it look like?
Yeah, fantastic. So along this journey, we've been propositioned to take our technology to many other verticals. So as you can imagine, wherever there's a scale requirement of a broker-agent relationship or franchisee-franchisor, the application of our technology is actually the same. So it could be in the car industry, insurance industry, and various other verticals. So what that's highlighted to us is, in fact, the total addressable market for what Flow is able to do is beyond just property. So to that end, we're playing in certain sectors where we're doing some skunk works, if you will, testing out the application, user cases, and things of that nature. And then, yes, in the immediate space of what we do on a daily basis is just to get more portals and CRMs around the world using our technology and partnering, of which there are many. So yeah, that's essentially what we have to.
Excellent. Well, this brings us to the end of a very, very insightful conversation with Daniel. Daniel, thank you for being open, transparent, and giving us your wealth of wisdom and knowledge from all the past experience, all the past businesses that you have done. I could continue going on and on. Every entrepreneur becomes very greedy when he's talking to another experienced entrepreneur. So thank you for sharing that, and all the best for your future. And looking forward to see you in other industries and in other verticals as well, and hopefully get you back when that happens. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ravi. I really enjoyed that. It's always great to share and remind myself of the journey. So thank you.
See you around, Daniel. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.